welcome or welcome back to my channel. We're gonna be doing some DIY Christmas candle making in this video. I had a candle that actually broke. We're going to reuse it and make 4 brand new candles that I will be gifting to friends. So this is a lovely DIY Christmas gift idea if you're looking for a last minute gift to give someone for the holidays or yourself. If you want to reuse an old candle or make your own candle that's plain, this will be the perfect video for you. First off, with that broken candle, I stuck it in the freezer. I wasn't sure if this was 100% gonna work because the glass was really quite broken. So very delicate to handle. I wrapped it in a plastic bag, stuck it in the freezer for, actually it ended up being 2 nights because I meant to film this yesterday, but didn't. But overnight should work. And then I gently used a knife to just kind of press away at the edges, and the wax popped right out of the glass jar and it was perfect and ready to use. I just rinsed it off and got any glass pieces that were left over off of the wax and set it aside. It actually started breaking in my hands a bit, which is perfect because we're gonna melt it down with what I also bought from Michaels. So because that amount of wax won't make individual candles or like enough unless they're like very small, I bought some container wax from Michaels. It's the Simple Serenity one. I bought 2 just in case. They're each 1 pound. I just am not sure how much wax I'm gonna need, but the candles are pretty small. So I also got just these 4 tins. There were some other ones that I liked better that were glass, but unfortunately they just like were too big and there wasn't enough of them to make as many as I wanted to. So these ones will do. Gold for the holidays as well. And they are Make Market tins for candle making from Michaels as well. And then I also got some wicks. They are quite long, but they will be cut eventually. And it does say for this one to do small to medium wicks, and this does say medium, even though the small ones were like too small for this tin. It's okay. If there's a better size, I would recommend getting one that fits your tin or your jar or your glass, whatever you're using, a bit better, but that's what I had. I'm gonna head downstairs and start the candle making process. First thing I did was hot glue gun the wick to the container. You can buy adhesive specifically meant for this at the store, but I figured I already had a hot glue gun on hand and wanted to save the extra money. I tried my very best to put 1 dot of hot glue in the center of the jar as best I could, and then carefully place the wick on top and pushing it down. The metal can get hot because of the hot glue, so just be careful of that if you are attempting this. I repeated the process, doing the same thing, just making sure that the dot of glue was as close to the center as possible, and then I put them all aside to cool down while I heated my wax. If you're curious, I used the Bath & Body Works Spice Candle as my scent. It was the one that broke, and I figured it was such a strong scent that it would be still fragrant and perfect for this process. So I got a double boiler ready to go and set it to a low to medium heat, pretty low though, and prepared my surface with some parchment paper just in case I got any wax anywhere. I didn't want to ruin the stovetop. Next step was preparing the wax. Now you can just put your reused candle into the double boiler and then remove the wicks very carefully once it's melted, but I figured it was really easy to just take the wicks out while it was cool, and I actually didn't really do a great job of caring for the candle and cutting the wicks when I burned it. There was quite a bit of like black stuff on the wax, so I carefully scraped that off and picked out any bits of black stuff that was in the wax as I was like cutting through it, and it did help the melting process kind of quicken a bit with all the smaller pieces. I did the same with the plain wax after as well. And then it was time to add the wax to the double boiler. I carefully transferred it with the paper towel that it was on and started with the scented candle first because I figured that would be the best idea, but then we ended up adding the plain candle right in after we chopped it up a little bit and then just melted it all together at once. Even though we were diluting the scent, because the Bath & Body Works candle is so strong to begin with, it ended up still smelling really, really fragrant, and I figured the candle would still be a scented candle in the end, just a little bit more subtle, but still enough to fill a room with that spice scent. We kept the temperature at at medium to low, closer to low really, and stirred every once in a while with a pair of chopsticks that comes in like a to-go sushi container. I ended up getting wax on the counter, but I cleaned it. So then I added some parchment paper on that side as well, just in case I did it again. And then we just kept stirring every once in a while with those chopsticks and continued to check the temperature as we went. We wanted to hit 180 degrees Fahrenheit before we poured the candle. So we just continued mixing, checking the temperature to see how far along we were. Obviously it wasn't gonna be done because there were still chunks of wax. Slow was the way to go for this. You want the wax to melt slowly so that there's no issues when it comes to burning it. That's just what I read online and it did work for us, so I recommend. I was very diligent about making sure that the temperature was exact. I kept checking it towards the end once everything was all melted and made sure that it was exactly at the right temperature before I poured it in. I was kind of worried about pouring directly into the candle with this pot because of the pour being kind of huge and the candles being small. So I poured it into a Pyrex measuring cup with a spout. It is heat safe. Make sure that anything you're pouring into is 100% heat safe. The one thing that I did wrong was I didn't heat the Pyrex measuring cup first before pouring in the wax, and it started to set around the sides. It was just at room temperature, but that was my mistake, so don't do that. It also says on the label to reserve 1 cup of wax as well to top off your candle to avoid a well that could form if you don't do this. Now, I will leave a helpful link in the description all about that and the information about it, but I did follow the steps exactly on the container wax to make sure that I avoided any issues. But then I just poured my wax in almost to the point of where I wanted it to finish and just repeated the process on all of them, reserving that 1 cup of wax for afterwards. Then I lined them up and used 2 barbecue skewers on each side to kind of keep the wick centered and lined up straight so that it wouldn't be all wonky as it set. Then I left it for about 1 hour to allow for it to set but not be completely set. And then I poked vertical holes near the wick, not all the way down to the bottom, maybe around halfway, making sure that they were vertical and not really disturbing the wick, so close enough but not too close, so that we could then pour the wax that was remaining in, fill those holes to avoid the well. Now, I did learn from my mistakes and I ended up heating the Pyrex container up before I poured the wax in. I just used the microwave until it was like slightly warm and it didn't end up setting on the sides. The wax was just reheated in the double boiler until it was at around 170, 175 degrees Fahrenheit. I topped off the candles until the holes were filled and they were at the appropriate height, and then set them aside to completely cool. The next day I worked on cute labels to add to the top of my candle. I just researched round SVG cut files that were free and ended up downloading one from GinaCCreates.com, and it ended up being perfect aside from the small little dots. So once I threw it into Cricut's Design Space, I cut one and it was so hard to weed that when I did my last 2, I just deleted the small dots before actually cutting. I ended up using Cricut's removable premium vinyl that came in the bundle set that I ended up getting when I originally bought the Cricut. It was just what I had on hand and it worked well for this project. It was in the shade white. Thought it would be a great contrast to the gold jar that I had. So I just let the Cricut cut the design and then it was time to weed it out. Because the design was so complex and small, it was quite difficult. I ended up on my stomach on the floor, just like meticulously going through and making sure those snowflakes stayed down as I was peeling off the negative space. It took quite a while, a lot of patience, and just really slowly going through to ensure that it looked good. But I'm really happy with the final result. I just had to then transfer it with some transfer tape, and I carefully placed it as carefully as I could in the center of the jar. Of course, I did measure the jar and changed the design in Design Space to make sure that it was the correct measurement. I wanted it to be as big as possible to help the weeding process, but I think it ended up being so good on the top of the jar in the end. It was really such an adorable little design. And there it is, all finished. I just pressed it down to make sure it was all placed properly. And those are all 3 done. I am obsessed with the result. I think they're so cute. It was definitely worth the time and effort to make this happen. Later on, this is the next night technically from when I poured the candles. I had to cut the wicks. So it advised to do about a 1/4 inch, so I did my best with the really dull scissors that I have, and that is the result. All of the wicks are cut to the appropriate length, and then I put the jar lids on top, and that was it. I think they turned out so cute. The design was perfect for the top of the jar, and it just added that extra special touch. I only ended up cutting the design for the 3, and the 4th that was mine was my test one. I tested it to make sure that it burned before gifting it to my friends, and it did. The wax melted perfectly, and it ended up being an amazing success. This was the final result. Sitting by the fire with the candle is just so cozy and a perfect DIY gift for the holidays. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did like it, please don't forget to give it a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and I can't wait to see you in another video tomorrow.